Okay, in this tutorial, we are going to create a 3D letter, but this time we're not going to use extrude. We're going to actually manually create this, okay? So let's begin. So I have a G typed out here again, and I actually am using Gale Sans. You can use a different font, but again, I would emphasize I think it's important to probably it would make it far easier for you if you use a sans serif font for these 3D letters that we're creating here. So first of all, let's once I've got my font and everything, let's go and make this into outline. So we'll go to type, create outline, so it will turn it into a vector path. Okay. Now let's click on it, and I am going to turn this to a blue. Okay, so I'm gonna make it maybe 70%, or let's go down to 65. I'm gonna make it a blue. I'm gonna also maybe add a little magenta to it. We'll have 15% magenta. Okay, now in order to make our 3D letter without extruding, but by doing traditionally, we want to copy this. So I'm going to take this and start moving it and hold down my Alt key. And what that will do is it will make a copy of it, just like that, okay? And so this is a great way to make a 3D letter. And of course, you can already begin to see it's in 3D, but we'll make this first one I did. Let's add a little black to it, so it's a little darker, okay? Now, I think it's a good idea to learn how to do this because you've got a lot more leeway as far as what the letter looks like when you're making your own, make it all in 3D. Also, you could adjust the shading better. So that's one of the reasons why we're doing this because in the past, whenever I was making 3D letters, I would try the extrude, and if I didn't like the results, I would go and make my own. So anyway, first thing we're going to do is we're going to have to try to connect these two. And it's so simple here. We're going to just actually get our pen tool. And I'm going to click on this end anchor point because I want to make it look like this letter is thick. And I'm just going to come over here. All right. And we're going to just make that shape there. Now I just got my eyedropper. I use the eye for the keyboard shortcut. Okay. Now let's go and get my main selection tool. And let's cut it. Now, the reason we're cutting it because it's a quick way to move things. So I'm going to go Command X. Oops, I got to go back here, Command Z. We want to make sure that the whole thing is selected because what I did was I cut an individual anchor point and cut two lines. So now I've clicked in the middle there. I'm going to do Command X. There we go. And let's go down to this G in the back here and do Command F or Control F if you have a PC. And that is the keyboard shortcut to paste in front. Okay? And so now I am going to make this into one shape. And I could just go and do Unite, or I could use my Shape Builder tool. If I just used Unite, it was a little bit easier there. Okay? Now, I am going to make a gradient. So let's go over here and make a gradient. And I want to use this blue that I already have in it. So the way we would do that is I like to create a gradient by first using our gradient palette. And our gradient palette works with our color palette. So you see how I have things lined up here. Now, you don't have to have them directly linked together the way I have it. I'm just used to having it this way. But this really will make my life a lot easier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this fill color, and I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to drag it into here. And so that will put that color in there. Now I want to move this over because see it created another color on top. So let's get rid of the one we don't need. Let's drag this over. Okay. Now the reason I wanted my fill palette open is so I could drag this here. And see now we've got two of the same color. Now what we're going to do is we're going to so now we got two of the same color on this gradient. I am going to add a little bit more black to this on this side, so it darkens it up. Let's add a little bit more cyan too, to make it kind of, and maybe a little bit more magenta, okay? So we get a nice gradient like that. And then let's go and get our gradient tool. G is a keyboard shortcut. And let's change the direction of this. So it goes at an angle like that, all right? And that looks pretty good. I'm going to actually go in here and make a lighter value in the middle here. And we're just going to drag out. There we go. So this has a nice rendered look to it. Now, part of the problem is we don't have this linked together yet here, and this is not linked together. Plus, I want to make this into a separate shape. Okay, so let's first of all, let's do this. I'm going to get my pen tool, and I wanted to divide this G in the background and have two separate shapes so that I can make a gradient going the opposite way. So let me get my pen tool, and we'll simply just click here, click here, click here. See where I'm clicking at? And then come all the way over here. All right. Now, before we do anything, let's go get our main selection tool, click on it, and cut it, Command X. And then we're going to paste in front of this back G. Okay? So I select the back G, and then I'm going to do Command or Control F, depending on if you got a PC. Okay, now let's hold down our Shift key and click on that back G so both shapes are selected. Okay? And what I'm going to simply do is I'm going to use my Pathfinder tools, and this tool right here is really cool. It's called Divide, because it's going to divide things up so they're different shapes. So let's just divide that. Now nothing looks like it's happened yet, as of yet. But what I want to do is I want to select this shape right here and delete it. Now, actually, if we're not using, I'm using the group selection tool. If we use the main selection tool and click, it's going to select everything. And that's because it's grouped. So after you divide something, it groups it. So let's ungroup it, okay? Just make our life easier. And let's delete this portion we don't want, okay? So we don't want that. Now, let me click on this G right here. Now one of the things we're going to do is we're going to change the direction of the gradient, but we might as well, while we have it, I'm going to just get this anchor point here. And since there's no curve in it, I'm just going to move it over to here. Okay? And I'm going to move this anchor point over to here. Now, if I needed to, I could always add another anchor point in. So I'm going to undo that and show you what I'm talking about here. I could just get my pen tool if I needed to and just click this and then click A, the A key, and then move that here. Okay? So there's a couple ways to do that. Now, the reason I wanted this as a separate shape versus this is because I want to change the direction of that gradient. So let's get our gradient here, okay? And I could drag it, but I'm going to first try and see what it looks like if I do this, reverse gradient. And that looks nicer. It looks nicer because now the shading is much darker up underneath. As it comes around, it lightens up, okay? And that makes it look a little bit more three-dimensional there, okay? Now, let's go in here and we're going to just make, we really don't need to do much here, but make these sides. And this is pretty easy because we're going to get our pen tool. And mind you, I want you to understand that if you're not seeing what I'm seeing, like with anchor, it tells me that I'm on the anchor point there. Make sure you're using your smart guides, okay? Because smart guides will inform you of things so you can see how the alignment is. And let's just click and make a kind of a trapezoid shape here. That looks nice. And we'll make that a lighter color. But let's go in and I'm going to start over here because if I start here, it will delete that. We don't want that, okay? I'm going to go over here. Or I could deselect. Shift Command A is deselect. But anyway, let's create this bottom part here. And now let's go in and play around with color, okay? So first of all, let's make this darker color here. Yeah, I'm just going to make this a darker color. What I'm doing is I just clicked on this gradient here. This darker color pops up. And this always gets tricky, but this is the last color. Click to set. And what it will do is it will actually change it into a flat color. Okay? It doesn't always work so easily, but it worked very easily this time. This time I'm going to come over here and click on this one. And then I'm going to click on this color here. Okay? And then I'm going to go up to my color palette. So I clicked on my gradient right there. Click on my color palette, do that. And then we're going to come over here and last color, click to set. All right, I'm always using that. And so I can actually control that. And so this really looks like a nice G, okay? And it's a little different from our other G because we get a little bit more control over how we're shading it. And so I think this is so important to know how to do because, you know, it's important to know how to manually create your 3D letters. And that's why I have these two exercises, okay? Because just in case you run into this down the road, or if you're creating a logo and you want a 3D letter and you're not getting the effect out of extrude that you want, then you can actually go in here and do this. And we can always change our colors, which is great because if we want to make that like a much more of a brighter blue, we can do that by just selecting it. If we want to change the color completely, we can go in there and change the color of the gradient. But anyway, this will end our tutorial. And one last thing here is when you submit your files, because I would hope that you create everything on one page like I'm doing, you'll see a difference. Okay, so Command Y, you'll see that the one that's extruded, we just see, because this is an effect, okay? And this we created. And because we created it, we can see all the vector paths, okay? And that's what I'll be looking for in your file, okay? So that will end this tutorial.